going on, Demon Hunters? So welcome back to another video of mine here. This time we're going to talk about something that we did last night on my stream. We actually, me and my crew basically was able to replicate the interaction of Valla's Bequest in the controlled environments. We were able to actually force the interaction to happen that we've all been trying to look for and try to figure out what's going on and stuff. So we have figured it out, and we've been able to do it for the most part on will kind of thing. So if you wanted to see more of that in a very scientific way, just look at the link below. There's a 2-hour stream video of us going through all the math and jargon and stuff like that to reach the conclusions that we did for this particular test. But what this video is about is to condense all that information into a much shorter video, explaining 3 different things. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you about the Valla's interaction, why it does what it does. Okay. The second thing I'm going to talk about is strafe breakpoints and why that's very important to you and your weapon choice that you use. And third, I'm going to talk about the other setups, that are really good to be able to make use of those breakpoints. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to actually show you the interaction with Valla's Bequest. So I'm going to show you first what is, basically on a single target, which Valla's Bequest doesn't really do anything at all. Okay. So here, Valla's Bequest on a single target, even though it's piercing, is not going to give you any extra generator shots. Okay. It is not until this dude right here gets into the mix that you see more generator shots happening. Okay, and as you can tell, it's trying to alternate between area and Woog. So it's trying to hit both, but it can't because area is in the way. But you're getting an additional projectile basically as you see it. Basically obviously upping your damage output there. So this is important because obviously now you see, like, you actually visually see an additional projectile hitting. Now the issue with this is that it's not consistent, okay, and it is based off the distance of the targets with the initial hit and the pierced hits. So this part is going to be hard to make consistent. As you see it changed because we went off, went off in the distance. He was still getting hit, but he was at a different distance before the pierce shot can interact between the frame breakpoint to generate an additional generator. Okay, so throughout the riff, this is pretty inconsistent, and it's hard to know how often this is actually happening for you. But at least you can kind of see visually, hey, this is happening. We know it's happening. Again, like I said, we were able to replicate the results of that. So that's Valla's Bequest for you in a nutshell, in layman's terms. Okay, so now I'm going to go to breakpoints, because breakpoints is actually a little bit more important, and it's going to let you know whether or not you should use Valla's Bequest or not. Okay, so I'm going to go to, let's see, 225. Okay, and we're going to discuss well, for right now, we're going to go 1 breakpoint above the optimal breakpoint. Okay, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, and I'm doing it with the 2-hand Odyssey setup. Okay, so you can kind of clearly see what's happening there. Yeah. There we go. All right. So as you see, I'm getting that little, almost the same attack speed as I was getting when I was using Valla's earlier. You remember that? So just keep that in mind. So now I go to the 1.5 to 1.67 breakpoint, which is considered 9 frames. Okay. Or another way to say 9 frames. And as you see, I'm attacking a lot faster. Okay. And this is important to note because this breakpoint and one other breakpoint gives a similar effect. This one is the easiest to reach. The other one, not so much, but it's going to it's basically going to let you know when and why you should or should not use Valla's Bequest. So going to the next part of this video here, I'm going to go to 4 minutes in. And what I do is I keep the Odysseys in still, but I equip Valla's Bequest in the cube. Okay, so I'm still running at the optimal breakpoint, which is 1.5 to 1.67 as you saw. But now I'm going to slot Valla's Bequest to see if, oh, well, I should be able to get more shots, right? This should be like a ton of shots, right? Well, no, as you see. It switched targets, yes. Or tries to switch targets, but I don't get an additional generator. Why? Because there's no room for it. I'm at the optimal amount of shots per shot of strafe, and there's no way to get another pierce to happen in between a frame to generate an additional generator. This means that the breakpoints between 1.5 and 1.67 and this other breakpoint I'm going to mention, Valla's Bequest is technically useless here because I'm already getting the max amount of generators possible. Okay, so with that being said, actually let's go on. Let's move on to the two-hand X bow. So we're gonna do the same thing with the two-hand crossbow. Okay, and the reason why I'm using the two-hand crossbow here is because the attack range of the two-hand crossbow, the base damage is higher than two-hand bow and one-hand bow, and because attack speed doesn't really affect the generated shots from strafe, then higher raw damage is going to give you more damage, period. So no other weapon in terms of raw damage, not like legendary buffs or whatever, but in terms of raw actual damage, two-hand X bow is going to beat out all the other weapons in terms of just raw damage. Okay, so with the two-hand X bow, as I'm about to show you here, I took off Valla's Bequest. I am able to, actually let's skip that part. We're gonna go to a breakpoint below. So we're gonna be at the 10 frame breakpoint below, which is 1.36. Okay, so here, as you see, I'm firing quick, but not as fast as the 9 frame, but still faster than most other breakpoints out there. So you really want to get to 1.5 if you can, but the one underneath it is not bad at all either, and it still gives you a similar effect to Valla's Bequest. Okay, so this is useful for you because, again, if you don't want to use Valla's Bequest but you want to get as many generated shots as you can, this is a way to do it. Two-hand X bow can do it. It can do it with just changing around Paragon and no attack speed on your gear. So based on what your attack speed on your quiver rolls, you just make it up with Paragon or adjust it with Paragon, and you can be within those breakpoint ranges to do what you need to do to optimize your setup. Okay, so now I'm doing one hand and shield, or sorry, one hand and no quiver. And the reason why I'm doing no quiver is because with the quiver I can't reach this breakpoint. Okay, so without a quiver I can get to the 1.5, 1.6, or 1.5 to 1.67 breakpoint to optimize this to the max, but I can't do it with the quiver, like at all whatsoever. Which means that if you want to, especially if you're a hardcore player, like if you play hardcore, you may like this a lot. You can wear a shield with this one-hander. You can wear a lidless wall, which is like a damage. It's like a DPS shield. It comes with elemental damage, which is really good. Okay. Unfortunately, shields can't roll hunger and arrow damage, nor can they roll area damage on it. But it does have other useful stats and things like that. Plus, again, the elemental damage, which is really good too as well. And because you can hit this breakpoint, that breakpoint is going to be a little bit more important than, not slotting a shield, and that's it, or not slotting anything in that slot, to be honest. So with that said, there's also another shield that drops in bounties. I forgot the name of what it's called, but there's a shield that drops in bounties that gives you 60% damage reduction, or chance to reduce your damage by 60% upon block. So that's a toughness shield in case you want to build tankier. It's a great way to build tankier without having to make any real serious sacrifices, I guess you could say, as long as you hit this breakpoint. Okay. So with that being said, let's talk about the other breakpoint. The other breakpoint is 2.51. Okay, and in order for me to reach 2.51, where's my marker here? Right here. In order for me to reach 2.51, I had to get attack speed on this ring, put the witching hour on, and roll attack speed on my glove. Okay, and put points back into Paragon for me to reach 2.51. Now that's a lot of rolls just to get 2.51, but if I do, I get a very similar, reaction. Again, not necessarily as good as the 9-frame breakpoint, but it's very, very, very close. Okay. However, to reach this requires requires so many different rolls on your gear to reach it that it just becomes a breakpoint that's really not efficient. Okay. So that means if you're dual wielding, or if you're using a one hand and a quiver, you can get to this breakpoint, but at a lot of sacrifice. So it's really not worth it. So if you're dual wielding or you're doing a one hand and quiver, your best option is Valla's Bequest, because Valla's Bequest is going to make up for the drop generators, I guess you could say, that you're not getting because you're not at prime breakpoints. Does that make sense? So Valla's Bequest technically, in a sense, is doing you a favor if you don't hit those breakpoints. So that's when you want to use Valla's Bequest, with that. Otherwise, you really don't need it, nor should you use it if you are at the breakpoints already, because you don't get any benefit from using it at those particular breakpoints. Okay. Another thing to know as well, that Hunter's Wrath attack speed isn't a factor in your Strafe breakpoints equation, because it only affects primaries, not the primary shot from your Strafe. So that's not factored into the equation for Strafe breakpoints. So just to keep that in mind as you're trying to optimize this for yourself. So things to consider as you're putting together your ideas and stuff like that for your build. If you want to run a two-hand X-bow, okay, all you need to do is just move around a couple of Paragon points, depending on the quiver that you get, the attack speed on your quiver, and then boom, you can reach, the break points necessary. Okay. For two-hand and bow setup, it's a little more complicated than this. Okay, so if you want to run an Odyssey Zen or a Treyu with the cold damage, which is actually a Treyu with the cold damage is very close to a two-hand X-bow in terms of raw damage. It's very, very close. It's like less than 3% difference. Okay, given you have 20% cold on the other two pieces already. So with that said, if you run Odyssey Zen or Atreyu or even Leonine, just depending on whatever setup you want to run, you have to take off all attack speed from your gear, and all your attack speed from your Paragon. Okay, and you must have a quiver that has 19% attack speed or less. If you have a quiver with 20% attack speed, you're going to be 1% over, and you will reach the next breakpoint, which is very inefficient. Okay, this means that if you drop a primal 9th series satchel and you want to run an Odyssey Zen, Atreyu, or a Leonine spec, that's bad news. In fact, it hurts you to get a primal rather than it helps you to get a primal. So really, you want 19% or below, and then that's kind of an interesting interaction, but it's very important for you to know that. Okay, so 20% quiver is bad for two-hand bow setups. Okay. Same thing with going with the one-handed shield. One-handed shield, all you need to do is adjust some Paragons, no attack speed on gear, and you can kind of get to the breakpoint you want to get to. Dual wield, you can't get there. You can't get to the optimal breakpoint. One hand and quiver, you can't get to the optimal breakpoint either. Okay, so that's very important for you to know, and that's when Valla's Bequest actually helps you, throughout the rift. Other interesting things to note too as well is that Rocket Storm, the rune for Strafe, also shoots projectiles that acts very similar to how Valla's Bequest does. Okay? In which if the rockets hit between the frames, you generate an additional shot. Okay? One thing to note is that they don't work together. So Valla's Bequest and Rocket Storm will not proc more generators at the same time. Okay? It's an either or effect. If Valla's Bequest interaction is working, then Rocket Storm isn't working. If Rocket Storm is working, then Valla's Bequest isn't working. So it's like a trade-off, like running singled out. If singled out is working, area damage is not working. If area damage is working, singled out is not working. So it's the same, it's a similar thing. It's like a trade-off. Does it mean that you shouldn't run Rocket Storm with Valla's Bequest? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that it's gonna be a trade-off. So Rocket Storm will help Valla's Bequest be even more consistent with this firing of shots whenever Valla's Bequest isn't interacting with anything. So Rocket Storm helps when Valla's Bequest is, slacking off on his job, and vice versa. That makes sense? So it won't give you double the amount of shots, or quadruple, or whatever you want to, you want to throw out there. It just will help you with consistency in terms of that. Now for Rocket Storm, for every other build that's not Valla's Bequest, it actually does help you quite a bit. Okay? Because there's no other interactions happening. So yeah, you will generate an additional generator every now and then with Rocket Storm when you're using any other setup. One more thing to note before I wrap this video up to as well is that if you are strafe weaving with Valla's Bequest, it actually ends up hurting your damage rather than helping your damage, because Valla's Bequest is trying to figure out the interactions between the frames. And so if you're shooting and you're messing up that flow and you're trying to strafe weave, you actually end up messing up that alternating generators. There's more detail in the longer video. If you want to check that out, you'll kind of see more of that there. So just beware of that, that you will tend to get less shots if you strafe weave, 2 times a second at perfect breakpoints or perfect frame on that. So there is that's concern. So that's a little unfortunate for Valla's Bequest, or doing it with Valla's Bequest, but kind of is what it is. Odyssey's End isn't scapegoat either. There's a bug with Odyssey's End, and not really Odyssey's End. Let me phrase that. There's a bug with switching generators. So if you're weaving with one generator and then you switch to another generator, sometimes that second generator you switch to won't fire from strafe afterwards. So let's say I shot an entanglement shot after shooting some hungering arrows. Sometimes I will shoot the entanglement shot, but my strafe will continue to shoot hungering arrows. Okay, so that's a bug. So if you've been using Odyssey's End setup, I that's all I use pretty much exclusively is Odyssey's End. So if you're using Odyssey's End setup, this is important to you, because sometimes you're thinking that, hey, I must have messed up my rotation, I must have messed up the weaving breakpoint and stuff like that. So you thought that you messed it up, and in reality, it's really a bug, and sometimes it just doesn't activate. So there's really no real workaround it besides hitting the button again to make sure entangling shot or hungering arrow the other way around fires when you want it to for the strafing, or you can kind of like listen really hard for the audio cue to make sure that your strafe is shooting entangling shots like it should. And it's important because if it doesn't come out like you think it's going to, then you might lose all your chains and you have to rechain everything again, and that becomes inefficient. That hurts your damage. So I figured this bugged out like 3 or 4 days ago, kind of thing, and it was very unfortunate, but now that I know, I'm working around it. But it's a rough one for Odyssey's End users for sure. So with that being said, this video is probably going on to almost close to 20 minutes, longer than I wanted to, but I hope this video was helpful, that you learned some things, that you're going into season 21 with a pretty clear idea of kind of what you want to do, which weapon choices you kind of want to make, and why you're making those weapon choices, so therefore you can you know, efficiently optimize your character the way that you want to. So if you have some friends or whatever, spread this video around, you know, show people and be like, hey, you know, look at this before you start your demon hunter to make sure you don't mess things up. And you know, and this stuff, because there's a lot of, you know, details with this. So hope you liked the video. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/theoxide. You know, I'll be streaming a good bit of the season. And yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it as always. And y'all have a good evening.